I am going to go on a supporters bus on Saturday to the game. So 34 quid for 35.50 because an admin fee of 150.
Of course, yeah. Inexplicable admin fee.
Yeah, so £35.50 to sit behind a pole because it's a restricted view ticket. So
that was going to be my next question: is whether it was whether you had paid for a restricted view one or not.
That was the only option. That was the only option. So I don't know if all Hearts tickets are restricted view, but
or they sell them first.
Yeah, I was there. But I think it was mentioned in the last pod that it was there for our last 4 victories there. So maybe make it 5, but yeah, I'm not sure about that. But we're here. We are here to chat about Heart of Midlothian football course. Of course, we are going to, just with it coming back after the international break, we're going to talk about how Hearts can turn the season around. And I know a lot of fans will have one answer: is that's remove the manager. But we do not have that power, nor do I expect that to happen between now and the return of the domestic season on Saturday. So we will try and give some maybe helpful advice, maybe guidance as to how best to turn this really poor season so far around, the worst start to the season in 46 years. Though I think it's the worst in the club's history I think it was, when I looked at it, it was 10 games. So I do think the next 5 are massive in the direction of the team under Steven Naismith. We got, after Celtic, it's away to St Mirren, then home at Ross County, then away to Dino Minsk in Europe, and then a really big one at Pataudry coming back from Azerbaijan. So you look at between this international break and the next one, and I do think it's pivotal. It's something that I'll be writing about to go on the site either tomorrow or Saturday. But between us, we've kind of just noted down different avenues or different headlines where there needs to be an improvement. And I mean, all of them kind of probably overlap with one another, but I suppose the first one we'll probably talk about, and it's something it's been a discussion point amongst Hearts fans, and that's the rotation. You've been looking into it as well for something. And would it be right to say that while the last season there was rotation, there needs to be some sort of consistency over the next few weeks, especially because Hearts are not going to be playing 2 games a week. It's very much Celtic one week, St Mirren in the next, Ross County the next. Then it's like the 3 game week. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that's a big factor. I think he can now, if he wishes to, have a more stable lineup over the next 3 games. I think when you're playing 3 games in a week, it's nigh on impossible. The drop off in that 3rd game, if somebody's to play all 3 games, start all 3 games, the drop off in fitness levels in that 3rd game is fairly drastic, and the increase of injury in the opposite direction increases. So it's both prudent for managers to use rotation in those situations, especially when they include such high intensity games as Europa League playoffs. So it's prudent to do that, and it's also just for the safety and the health of the players. Really, you don't want to run a player into the ground. I mean, I noticed that Vargas, I don't know if it's related or not, but I noticed that Vargas was unfit or wasn't fit enough for the first Costa Rica game that he was away for. And going by what they said, the registration issues for the second one, he was fit to play in the second one. So that's positive news. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's picked up a niggle or something because of the amount of football he's played. Did he start the first 4? He started the first 4, and then I can't remember exactly. But
I think he started 6. I think he started 6 of the 7 games.
Right. Okay. Yeah. He's been in a lot. He's played a lot of football, and naturally, you can pick up a niggle from a challenge, from a 50-50 or a bad tackle from the other party or whatever. But you can also be more disposed to get these if you're playing more football. So from that sense, Naismith's hand is just forced into rotating.
Mm-hmm.
You can then argue about his implementation of it and the decisions he's making within that. But for me, I don't think there's a discussion about whether you should rotate the squad or not. Okay, you can maybe have the discussion when it's week to week, as I kind of started this answer with. Weekend to weekend, you've only got one game a week. You can then make an argument for it. But unfortunately, your hand's just forced when you have to play that many games. And actually, drilling down into the numbers, when you look at the changes that have been made, there was one change made. The only time we've had like a game week to week was the start of the season. And there was one change made between those two games, Rangers and Dundee. After that was Falkirk. There was another week between those games, but that was followed by the first leg in Pilsen. There was 8 changes made for that. Now, it's a separate discussion. You could say that you could argue why we're making that many changes in a tournament that we've got such a pitiful record in. That's a fair argument to make, but I think that's for another day. I don't think it's a strange thing for a manager in a lesser competition against lower league opposition to rest so many first-team players. It's been done here and in England by teams up and down the leagues. It happens. The teams like Falkirk do it in the Challenge Cup, for instance. It's just something that happens, and every now and again it backfires. That's not to let everybody on that day off the hook. It's they did it the season before and it worked. It's just I'm more talking about the changes here. I don't think, and it backfired, but I don't think in and of itself it's a poor decision to make that many changes necessarily. And then if you look at, for instance, the 2 Pilsen matches, there's only one enforced change between the 2 lineups there. Now those are weeks apart. So you could argue that there has been some sort of stability within there. If you see what I mean, if you sort of like, if you look at the first 2 weeks of the season and you kind of like compare like with like in terms of matches and sort of ignoring the fact that you have some weeks that you have 3 in a week, I think you can see a bit more consistency there. The issues for me, the main issues for me is things like Kingsley at right back. I think things like that he's got to knock on the head, especially with the pressure that he's under. And the other discussion, which again I maybe like differ from a lot of other Hearts fans in terms of opinion, but I said there was one change between the Rangers and the Dundee game, but that came with it a formation change. I think when we talk about formation change, we're only really talking about between a back 3 and a back 4. Those are the 2 fundamentals. Everything else is just here and there, really. But he switched between those. Now that's another. I think he's quite within his rights, and again, right to do it. But I know that's not really a popular opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I get the rotation, and my kind of issues around my main issue around rotation, because again, he did it last season, but it was, I think you passed on the figures. It was like between the Dundee and the Falkirk game, 8 changes, and then the Pilsen was like 5, then 4, then 5, then 4. It's the number of changes. I do think there's around 2-3 changes. I think that's, if you're doing it consistently, 2 or 3. That's all you probably need, especially with the fact that you get 5 subs. So I think it does make it easier for managers to take players off and kind of rest them that way without having to give them like the full week off. And I just find that, just spoke to Naismith earlier in the week, and he talked about Danda and Spittle, and in general he's talked about players who need to earn their opportunity to stay in the team. But I also think there's a responsibility for Steven Naismith to give players a run of games, because I think it's hard for players to find that rhythm, build relationships, build confidence as well. And I think especially in the final third, where you had like Barry Mackay started the first 2 games, and then he's been on the bench, and then Spittle's been in and out different positions, Danda's been in and out. I just think it's hard for players to get a wee bit of momentum when it's like that. And I go back to the first game of the season. What's been our best performance? It was the home game against Rangers. We've not seen that team since. Which is a wee bit frustrating because I looked at it and that game, and I thought it was a decent balance within the team. And there was solid back four, platform in midfield. Maybe not wouldn't play Devlin and Grant every single week, but that kind of base in midfield, and then again you can move around one or two, but having Danda and Mackay playing slightly wider and Vargas, and having that Vargas and Shankland dynamic, and it worked in that game, and that's where I just like, that kind of work. Well, can we see it? Can we see it again? And yeah, it's a hard one to say because coming up this weekend is, as Graham says in the comments, is Celtic Park is the worst place to be going right now. Confidence is low in Celtic fly. I fear this could be Hammond. I think we'll play 3-5-2, so like last season, which I think we will, and then it'll be back to a back four maybe at St Mirren. You never know, but I do think that there is, as Jim Ogg says, that there is a need to maybe stick with one formation or even a regular starting 11. Which I do think that I completely agree with rotation, but minimise that, if you know what I mean. Have a core. I think have a core, and then allow players to play together and get a feel for each other.
Yeah, I think I would say what is called for now is to stick with a shape, and just as you've said there, and as we spoke about in a recent video, is maybe a core of players and making a couple of changes here and there. I think that's maybe what now calls for. I know it's a little bit unfortunate that we're going to Celtic Park because that's a completely different game to. Yeah. As we've discussed before, we wouldn't be surprised if and it turns out to be one of our better performances of the season, regardless of the result, if you see what I mean. Because our issue is teams that are, and Naismith's perfectly aware of this, our issue is when teams just let us have the ball and sit off us, and we don't have the answers to break that down. Spittle and Danda, I'm glad that you mentioned them because that was something that I have written for that piece that's due to go out over the next couple of days, is that I totally agree with Naismith when he talks about, I'm quite sympathetic to players and moving to different clubs and different countries and different circumstances and all those kind of things. And there is a difference for playing Motherwell and Hearts with expectancy and all that kind of thing. And those kind of things, that settling in period for players like those, that can't be helped. I would imagine that can't be helped by being in and out of the team and being shunted about position. I can only imagine that in the situation that we're in, the players in question would maybe prefer just a bit of stability within the lineup and within a position. But yeah, I think this. Like you say, I think we maybe have to wait for the St Mirren game for it to settle a bit, because there's going to be a bespoke game plan for Celtic that's different from what we implement for 60-70% of the other matches. Yeah,
it's one of those where I hate when people say you don't get judged when playing Celtic and Rangers. You do get judged, especially you should get beat
9-0. You do, yeah, exactly.
And especially at Hearts, you should get judged in every single game. But it'll be a different kind of judgment compared to, because it's a different time of game than it is away to St Mirren or Ross County, or home to Ross County, where we're expected to have a lot of the ball. And I suppose that moves on to the next point, is around the system / style. And we've talked about the need to maybe kind of just settle on a system and play that. But I understand, and we've just kind of talked about it around the Celtic, there's going to be certain games where a certain system is more suitable, but it's the output, I think, that's within that. It's which I think is maybe a bigger issue, is the style of play and how the team have been performing, whether it's in a back four or whether it's in a back three. Just going into the comments here, and that Andy Dotto says, new Scottish Premiership and Hearts fan here from the States, is the general pattern of play much different than last year? I think we just don't have Shankland bailing us out this year. just do. And Graham says the biggest worry is the lack of creativity in goals. We don't like scoring now. We have creative players, but it feels like they're being stifled by the change in system. And this is probably my biggest. This is my biggest issue because of how long it's been an issue for. In that, over the last 12 months, I don't think Hearts have resembled the team that Naismith talked about, nor has it resembled the team that Hearts fans, the kind of Hearts football that Hearts fans maybe recognise and you want to enjoy. I think there's been enjoyable moments, but there's enjoyable goals, enjoyable periods in games, but I think there's been very few like enjoyable performances over the last 12 months, and even more so this season.
Yeah, at first I thought you were talking about this season there. When you were talking about goals, I was thinking, God, you're really stretching.
Not got any.
Really stretching the plural there. No, I mean, you talk about the switching system not suiting certain people. I think, I can't remember who the last comment was from there, but Barry Mackay's maybe, you mentioned him, he's maybe another example of that. He started the first game and was pretty decent against Rangers on the left wing, and then he was put into a position that, I mean, I don't remember seeing him play well in the number 10 before, really. And it just seemed like a bit of an unnecessary change for him, regardless of like how Naismith was wanting to set up for that particular game. It just seemed a bit of an unnecessary change for him. And he's not really recovered from it since. So, yeah, it comes back to what we were talking about with the rotation, but I really, it probably does call for some sort of stability, and maybe the international break did come at a good time where we could just, because I don't think we're a million miles away. There's enough aspects of the game there to, if we can get a few things right, then things will start to turn. I don't think we're like a lost cause all over the park or anything like that. So maybe the international break came at a good time for us to just sort of like finely tune a few things, get players settled a wee bit more. And we're still early enough in the season that if this isn't like this run isn't going to define or like hang over into the rest of the season too much, then it do you know what I mean? It will just be like a season blip, hopefully, but it's just happened to have come right at the start of the season. Sorry, I couldn't quite find my words there.
Yeah, I know what you mean in terms of if like Jim was saying, do you think this is just a poor start to lull the rest of the league into thinking we are shite, and then when they decide to start attacking, we'll just
did it last season?
Yeah, we'll take advantage, and that's a big thing in the game.
Without the attacking.
And we did decide to start attacking, and I think that's kind of going back to the point is that we've gone through this already, and it's still trying to kind of go back and find answers. And the hope was that, right, we'd managed to finally break teams down and be more of an attacking presence last year. But I know it's a small sample size of four league games because I've only compared the league games to the start of last season. But there's definitely been a noticeable drop off in how we're attacking teams and how we are. And how much of a creative threat we are. There's a drop off from last season when we were already struggling. So I do think that the big job that Naismith's got in his hand is to find a way again to break these teams down when they come and sit in, but to do it in a manner which is there's longevity to it. So we're not. It's not cyclical when we're not coming back like, oh, we're having to do this again. We need to find a way to be better at beating these teams. And like you said, there's elements of the game that are positive, and I've watched enough games back to look at like, right, okay, we're progressing the ball into the opposition half, and then just like nothing seems to happen. And Naismith again talked about earlier in the week about the players playing that pass, that kind of risky pass, and again, it was stuff he said last season. Yes, like the likes of Spittle and Danda will need to learn that. Spittle was really guilty of it against Dundee United, taking the safe option, so that's something that gets drummed into him. But Danda's never someone that I don't think I've looked at him and thought, oh no, he's taking the safety option. So Hearts, I think that's a big thing. Hearts need to play with a bit more risk, and I think everyone would like to say play with a bit more pace, but we'll come to that when we talked about fixing the attack, because there's a lot of issues with the attack. Moving on to, I suppose, the area of the game that's probably the easiest, I think, to get right, and the one that players especially can take the most responsibility on is eradicating errors, individual errors.
Aye, and it's uncharacteristic of the team and how they played during that successful spell last season. So hopefully that is just everything coming all at once, and that is something that can be eradicated, because that is something that the manager's got limited control over. Once Frankie Kent, for instance, to pick the goal that Pilsen scored at Tynecastle, not to single him out, but just that's the first one that comes to mind. But Naismith hasn't made the decision for him to play that pass in between his own a high crossfield pass in between two of his own players, and likewise he hasn't made the decision for Devlin to play the ball back to Kent. So there's only so much you can do. Like the Salazar thing, I mean, you could make the argument that Salazar shouldn't start that game, but once he does, Naismith can't be blamed for the poor pass back that he makes. So this is something that Naismith takes less blame for, unless he keeps picking the same players that are just making individual errors over and over again. But yes, hopefully that and our defending from set pieces, two of the things that were quite good for last season, can improve, and that would certainly help, because we are in a situation right now, score goals. So anytime we make a mistake and concede a goal, then that's it. And the Dundee United game, actually, the worrying thing about the Dundee United game is that there was a sense of inevitability to it. We both agreed at some point early in that second half that it was just a matter of time before Dundee United took the lead, and we were pretty confident the game was going to finish 1-0 to Dundee United. So that was the worrying thing about that. And yeah, just to sum up what I was saying to answer your question, it is something that can be eradicated, and it's something that we have to, because we are barely scoring any goals. We can't keep doing that. If we can't overturn any leads, we've got to stop giving teams a head start.
And yeah, speaking of the lack of goals, I want to bring in a comment here from Stephen Mayer. We have not equalised or taken a lead in a game, and that's absolutely damning. That's damning, depressing.
Haven't scored in the first half.
Haven't scored in the first half either. No. It's the worst. It's the worst start to the season in terms of goals in the club's history. So yeah, I mean, you can throw so many different aspects of it.
Maybe Celtic will just let us have the ball.
That would be nice. Maybe.
Would it? So we could just go through all this again, but against the champions instead.
Yeah, you're trying to break. Yeah, that would be interesting. But yeah, you look at so many different attacking stats. One of the most damning when you bring in like XG and stuff is that in terms of the quality chance that Hearts are creating, it is the lowest in the league, and I don't think that will surprise any Hearts fan who are watching them.
It's only, sorry to interrupt, but just to add to that, it's only 4 games, but it's also for each league game it's decreased, I think.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure when I looked at that graph recently that our XG per game is decreased in only league games. So stress only league games.
It's it's not a good sign. It's a terrible thing, to be honest. But it's always said to coaches, teams are really good at. It's easier to set up a team that's hard to beat than it is a team that's like a really good attacking attacking outlet. But
Mhm.
that is the responsibility that Naismith, Gordon Forrest, Frankie McAvoy have, is to get a team that has one of the best strikers in the country scoring again. They managed to do it last season after Shankland went through a blip, but it's difficult, and it's easy just to go fix the attack. How you fix the attack, I don't know if you have any specifics that you would like to see. Personally, I've been banging the drum for ages, but I would like to see more pace in the attack. I think, again, going back to what Naismith said about playing too safe, I think you've got someone, and go back to what he said about Finlay Pollock when I spoke to him, you've got someone who gets the ball and is really direct. And Naismith perhaps does know better than me in terms of how you manage young players. And when I spoke to him, he did speak about that, and kind of asked him, like, it's a difficult balance, because you want to bring youngsters down, but also there is an environment it's not the easiest when Tynecastle gets tense. But my point would be that he would energise the crowd. I think the people coming on, it's like, if he starts running at people, the crowd are going, okay, this is positive. I do think that Hearts need more pace in the final third. I think it's too slow, and it's too easy to defend against.
Mm-hmm. Well, he did try that with Oda and Vargas in the last game, didn't he? I mean, obviously it didn't work, but he did.
Yeah. Again,
try to get more pace up there.
Again, this is a criticism of the players, but also it can be a criticism of Naismith, in that Oda and Vargas in that game were on the periphery at best. They didn't make an impact.
No, I agree. It's just I think that was his intention. That's why he set them up like that, to get more pace into the final third, and then with Penrice bombing on down the left because Vargas was tucking in. But I mean, to add to what you've said about young players, I think he's obviously got a duty to protect them as well, and that's where the apprehension will be from just chucking them in. It's not just it can never be a case of just chucking them in, which he's fully aware of, and like there's quotes out there that kind of back up that that's his thinking as well. But the charge against him would be that he's not taking enough of a chance on young players in his time there. And that was something, again, like the attacking football thing, it was something, he nailed his colours to the mast early on, and those were the two things that he mentioned. More attacking football. And he said to you earlier in the week that he's brought the age of the squad down, which is true, but it seems to have been done at the expense of young players, because young players seem to be now more on the periphery, because our first team squad seems to be bigger now.
Yes, yeah.
Am I right in saying the first team squad's bigger?
Yeah, I'm positive it is, and it definitely is, because you're struggling to get on the bench, and it's what was going to say around the young players in terms of the squad size. Yeah, they've had to play with the B team. Pollock's been on the bench a couple of times. Tate's been on the bench a couple of times, I think, when he was in Europe, and James Wilson's came on. And again, I'm no expert, and I probably am in the camp of just play them and find out, because I would imagine that Pollock and Tate and Wilson, I would imagine they don't really care if the crowd are a wee bit antsy. They just want to play in the first team, and maybe with a wee bit more experience, that's that kind of pressure and the nerves come with it. But just that enthusiasm, I think, and adrenaline probably gets them through that in those kind of initial stages.
I think you're right. I think it'll probably vary from player to player, and then it's going to be impacted by what happens in the game. You make a couple of errors, and I mean that will be difficult for most young players' mentality if they go on and the first thing they do is make a couple of errors. So yeah, it's definitely contingent on that. But I do think that you can get that from young players, where you just get that sort of fearlessness and enthusiasm, which and like you say, plus the adrenaline can kind of carry them through. So talking about pace in the final third, because I mean, let's face it, we can call for Finlay Pollock. I don't think we might see him on the pitch at some point, but I don't think he's going to start any of the next few matches. What about someone like James Penrice being pushed further forward? He played there for Livingston, not only on the left wing. I'm sure he played inverted on the right wing.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Not what I'm suggesting, by the way. I mean, again, that would just go against what I was saying earlier about there being square pegs and round holes. But he showed in flashes in the Dundee United game how he could attack that space. He has in other matches as well, right enough. But he's not alien to the position, and he's one of the quicker players in the team. I'm sure there's no rush to put Salazar back on the pitch after his error in the Motherwell game, but you've got a reliable backup left back in Kingsley there instead of Penrice, if you wish. So I don't know what you thought of that as a suggestion. And as I said to you before, when I floated this a couple of weeks ago, is you can then, if needed, you can switch between the two shapes, because Kingsley can tuck in, and then you've got Taylor that can play, let's just say it is Taylor, who can play fullback or wing back on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Penrice has been more of one of the more positive, promising players that have emerged this season. He's quick. I think, was it you that did you mention it to me when we were watching games? Like you didn't realise, or
Falkirk was the first time I'd seen him in the flesh. I've probably seen him a couple of Livingston games, but never really been concentrating on. But I was surprised by how quick he was.
Quick, yeah. Well, yeah. So he's got pace, he's got stamina, he's got a good left foot. So I mean, I think it's more acceptable than Kingsley playing as right back when we've signed two right backs in the summer, for example, because it's a position he's played before, but naturally played before throughout his career. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility, because you look at it and Oda. Let's say it as it is. Oda's not delivered. He's had chances and he's not delivered, whether it's from off the bench, whether it's starting. He's two starts that kind of stand out. Dundee United game is he didn't do nearly enough. Falkirk game started off well and then missed a chance and then kind of played within himself. So he's
got to score. He's just got to score. It was a 1-on-1, and he couldn't have asked for a better chance to get off the mark this season.
So yeah, I agree that's certainly a consideration if looking at the wide options, and also the fact that just like you've got to, if first team players are not taking their chance when given and not providing the team what needs, then there has to be a discussion of trying somewhere else, whether it's James Penrice further up, whether it's Musa Drama coming, getting game time, whether it's one of the young boys coming in. That's definitely a consideration. Probably finally, the final point is to stick on is Lawrence Shankland. I think he's a very honest player, and he's probably admitted that he's not played well this season, but it's been frustrating watching him. I'm not sure if either of us will be able to answer this, but how do you get the best out of him?
Get him some support, take the burden off him, other people to score goals. I think that's the main thing. I mean, I know that's the main issue with the team at the moment, but I do think his poor runs are exacerbated by the fact that nobody else scores. He's entitled to have dips in form and have games or runs where he doesn't score, but he still contributes to the team in other ways. He's entitled to that if he scores 30 goals in a season. What he needs is other people to not only create more chances for him, but to take the burden off him and score goals. I think that's the main thing. I mean, I know it sounds quite simplistic, but I think that's what a lot of this stretches back to. If we had another couple of reliable goal scorers or people chipping in from all over, then this spell wouldn't seem as bad for Lawrence Shankland. He wouldn't be getting as frustrated. He'd be able to just have a few games where he's like still part of the team and then, you know what I mean, gets over his hump and then starts scoring goals again or whatever it is. But at the moment, I sent you that pressing map, Dundee United's pressing map from Dundee United. Sorry, starts from StatsBomb. Sorry, I was going to say Dundee United again there. I'd already used it. What a nightmare I'm having today. And the only really pressured Kingsley, which probably because he was in an awkward position. Penrice a bit, and Shankland and Vargas, it looked like they were in kind of similar positions. And it looks like that's the only areas of the pitch that United engaged for large parts of the game. So that's all teams need to do. They need to shut out, at the moment, out of form and frustrated Lawrence Shankland, and there's nobody else that's stepping up to relieve him of that burden.
Yeah, and I also think it's a consequence of just how poorly the team have been attacking. That I think the worst example of this was at Motherwell. The amount of times he dropped into the Hearts half, and it's almost like you need to just have exclusion zones. Like if the plays there, just don't you go any deeper than here. I like Naismith. I like Shankland getting involved in the game. I like him involved in the build-up, but he needs to be involved in the build-up probably 10, 15, 20 yards further up than he is. That's a responsibility on him to go, right, you know what, I'm not going to go all the way back there. But responsibility on, again, use him an example because he was bad for it against United. Spittle to get the ball, turn and pass forward and give Shankland the ball much further up the pitch. Aye. So yeah, he definitely needs to he definitely just needs to people have been criticising his body language. I didn't think it was a good look when he lost when Penrice passed him the ball. It got lost against United, and the game was still going on, and he was standing there shouting at Penrice. It was like that was a really poor look. But I think I can understand why he's frustrated and that he's not been able to get the ball in good areas, and he's just looked ended up just looking a wee bit off it. So yeah, it's I think it's important, and it's probably something that all Hearts fans want to see, is just him just play much further, much closer to goal.
Aye, it's at the stage again where we kind of need two of them, isn't it? We need the creator Shankland and the goal scorer Shankland. We need Shankland to be setting up Shankland.
So when you say that, I see James Cairns sent me something this morning that he saw on Twitter, and it was a graph of the most creative players from open play in the Scottish Premiership so far this season. Of all the players in the Scottish Premiership, there's only two Hearts players within this graph. Can you name the two Hearts players?
Okay, well, it must be Shankland because that's why
Shankland's one. Yep.
That's why it's come up. Is it total XG or XG per 90 minutes? Do you know?
It's so.
That's all right. It's all right. I didn't think you'd know that right off the top of your head, but it would make a difference.
It's okay. So it is open play key passes by open play expected goals assisted for all the nerds out there.
I'm not entirely sure what all that together means. I mean, individually, I could explain all the components, but I'm not entirely sure what it all means together. I don't know, Penrice. We're talking about Penrice. He gets into the final third. He'd be quite a surprise. Per key pass, I suppose you have to be.
So basically, the overarching theme is open play chance creation. So who's creating chances from open play? So Shankland is Shankland's kind of league average, and then the other Hearts player is below league average.
Just go for it. I'm not going to be able to. Penrice is my best guess.
Centre back Frankie Kent. But I do again.
God. Just from like crossfield passes or something like that.
But I don't know if it's just because he's the only one that's played loads of minutes, and I don't know if this comes back to the fact that there's other players who just simply not had the minutes to make an impact. Yeah. But yeah,
it's only 4 games as well, so you're going to get some weird things thrown up in that, aren't you?
Yeah. So yeah, that's everything we said across the last 40 minutes. That's all Steven Naismith has to do, and we'll finish third, no problem. I'm sure that's how it works.
It's quite funny at the start where you were talking about like we're gonna give some ideas on how we could turn around. Yeah, I'm sure he's tuning in and writing all this down.
Hopefully follows suit, and then we get congratulated at the end of the season for turning the Hearts season around. That's how I see it. We will be back later on this week from Friday, a very short podcast on Friday just to preview the Celtic game. but there won't be much to say within that. I doubt. So it'll be a short podcast. But yes, other than that, thank you very much, everyone, for listening, for engaging, continuing to support, subscribe, everything you do. There's plenty of stuff on the site. Spoke to Naismith again this week about young players, spoke to about the transfer window and just how you assess that, and also the attacking side of things within the team. And I know people reading it might not agree with Naismith, but he tried to explain his view on certain things, and then we'll have a couple of kind of preview stuff ahead of the return from the international break, and a profile on Graham Jones that Craig has written that will be going out tomorrow. But yeah, until Friday, take care. Thank you very much, and goodbye, guys. End stream. Where is it?